Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Musings. Happy Wednesday morning to you. I appreciate you being with me. Well, I've spent the last couple of mornings sharing with you some thoughts about the coronavirus. You know, it's really interesting to me that in private messages, emails, and what have you, uh, I've been accused of downplaying the significance of the coronavirus. I specifically stated twice on two different days that I'm not downplaying the significance of the coronavirus. What I was doing is comparing the current death toll from coronavirus with the known death toll from the flu. And I pointed out that as of Monday of this week, there have been 22 plus thousand deaths from the flu in 2020. And at the time, there had been less than 20 deaths in America from the coronavirus. Now, that's not downplaying anything. It is simply stating the fact. Is the death toll from coronavirus going to increase? Almost undoubtedly. But again, I'm not downplaying the importance. I'm not downplaying the severity. I'm not downplaying the threat of the coronavirus. What I am urging is a good bit of common sense, a good bit of calm, and a good bit of wisdom. And that is that we not lose our humanity, we not lose our decorum, that we go about our lives taking the necessary precautions in order to avoid contracting this disease. It is serious. But as I pointed out to you, has nothing to do with prophecy, has nothing to do with the end times, has nothing to do with the last days. That's the good news. That doesn't mean we should not be concerned from a physical perspective, from a familial perspective. Yes, we should. But I hope that clarifies what I was trying to do on the last two videos. All right. I want to get back to our study of the Olivet Discourse, Matthew chapter 24. We've been focusing on Jesus' statement that immediately after the tribulation of those days, and let's not forget, okay, this absolutely must be driven home because, for instance, just this last week, I have pointed out to some former preterists who literally will not pay attention to any evidence that you present. They are so agenda-driven, so blind in their hatred of the full preterist view that no amount of evidence, literally nothing that you can show them from Scripture, no matter how explicit the text, doesn't matter to them. And that's really, really sad. But what I pointed out in some conversations on Facebook this week, I reminded them that Jesus said the abomination of desolation, which was foretold by Daniel, would be set up in Judea. It would be witnessed by, seen by Jesus' own personal apostles. And the great tribulation would ensue as a direct result of that. Now, folks, that puts the abomination of desolation, that puts the great tribulation, and therefore it puts the coming of the Lord of Matthew 24, 29 and following in Jesus' generation. Because you have the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, set up in Judea, witnessed by the apostles, the ensuing great tribulation, the flight from Jerusalem by the apostles. And immediately following that tribulation, you have the coming of the Son of Man. That means, without a doubt, the coming of the Lord of Matthew 24, 29 to 31 had to be in Jesus' generation, just like Matthew 24, verse 34 says. And you know what? When I presented those facts over and over again, I got not one single keystroke of response. That shows you basically the lack of integrity, and I hate to say that. I really do. But the lack of integrity of those who are determined not to pay attention to what the text actually says. Now, let me illustrate that as we continue. I've shared with you several videos on the sounding of the trumpet. And I want to drive that point home in this pretty brief video before I move on to 1 Corinthians 15, 1 Thessalonians 4, Revelation chapter 11, all of which foretold the sounding of the trumpet and the gathering of the elect. Okay? We're going to get to those. But let me remind you of this really quite simple argument. It may be simple, but it's truly profound, and it is incredibly powerful once we see the connections. Let me remind you that the promise of Matthew 24, verse 31, of Christ sending forth his angels with the sound of a great trumpet is taken directly from Isaiah 27 and verse 13. You can examine virtually any critical commentary. And by the way, the ancient rabbis saw that Isaiah 27:13 was a prediction of the resurrection at the end of the age. They understood that. They commented on that. And thus we have the virtual unanimous testimony of the ancient rabbis. We have Jesus quoting Isaiah chapter 27 and verse 13. So here's the deal. Isaiah 27 and verse 13 is the gathering of the elect of those who are about to perish. They're the dead ones. And because remember, the Lord killed Israel. How had he slain Israel? By sending her away. Captivity, dispersion was her death. Kind of interesting that just this morning, Sam Frost was ridiculed, scoffing, denying the corporate nature of resurrection. Well, Isaiah 27 effectively refutes any denial of a corporate resurrection. The Lord killed Israel. He's not talking about individuals. He's talking about the nation of Israel. How had he slain her? By sending her away into captivity. That's how Israel died, through sin and captivity. But he promised to raise her from that death. He promised to raise her from the kind of death that they had experienced. They had experienced separation from God because of sin and through captivity. We therefore have the prediction of the corporate resurrection from spiritual death, not biological, physical death, and that would be when? At the sounding of the great trumpet. Now, when would this take place? Well, Isaiah 27 and 10 and following is emphatic, very specific, irrefutably true. That time of Israel's salvation, the time of the taking away of her sin, the sin that had killed her, would be when the fortified city would be made desolate, when the altar would be turned to chalkstone, when the very people whom the Lord had created would no longer receive mercy, when the people of no understanding, a direct citation of Deuteronomy 32:28, when that people was destroyed. Well, Deuteronomy 32:28 is a prediction of Israel's last days, not a prediction of the end of time. It's not a prediction of the end of the Christian age. It is a prediction of Israel's last days, when the Lord would judge the people who refused to have understanding, the people whom he had created at the time when he made the altar of the temple like chalkstone when the fortified city was destroyed. That's the time of her salvation. It's time of destruction, the time of salvation. That would be the time of the sounding of the great trumpet. It's the time of the resurrection from that sin death. Now watch this. The promise of the sounding of the great trumpet for the gathering of the elect was the promise of the resurrection. Jesus, in Matthew 24:31, said that he would send forth his angels with the sounding of the great trumpet, Isaiah 27:13, to gather together the elect. Isaiah said that sounding of the great trumpet for the gathering together of the elect, the dead, the resurrection, would be when Jerusalem was destroyed, the altar was destroyed, Israel was destroyed. Jesus said the sounding of the great trumpet for the gathering of the elect would be in his generation. That means the resurrection would be in Jesus' generation. I basically challenge anyone to refute that. Okay? Now, I suspect there's going to be a whole lot of flailing of arms and smoke and dust, thunder and lightning. But there will be no exegetical refutation. Once we see the power of this, covenant eschatology is 100% established as true. Hey, listen, do not forget, this month, March 2020, my 3-book special, okay? 3 great books to help you understand all of these concepts of resurrection, not only the nature, but the timing of it. My book, Like Father, Like Son, on Clouds of Glory, in which I discuss Isaiah 27 in depth. The Elements Shall Melt with Fervent Heat, in which I also discuss Isaiah 27 and Matthew chapter 24. And How Is This Possible? If you purchased each one of those books separately, independently, and paid shipping on each one of those, cost you $60. But for March 2020, for U.S. orders only, if you're out of the U.S. and you want to purchase PDFs, contact me privately, and I'll help you order that way, saving you over 50%. All right? So, U.S. orders on the books themselves, March 2020, $40 delivered to your door. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com. There's a tab up top, a banner up there. Just click on it. It'll march you right through it. Okay, we will continue this on tomorrow as we look at 1 Corinthians 15 and 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. You don't want to miss it. So I'll see you on the flip side.